All right, my first song. Feelings. Nothing more than feelings. And that's all the personnel is all about, right?
Old school.
I know I'm dating myself. All right, I think I can do this without the mic, right? Hopefully.
It's more fun with me.
What's that?
It's more fun with me.
Okay, friends. Who'd like to open us with prayer? Not it. Not it. All right, thank you.
Gracious and loving God, thank you that we are formed in your image and continue to grow and learn with each and every day. Thank you for the people who staff our congregations. Thank you for the personnel committees. We pray for insight and wisdom, for compassion, and for honesty as we have these conversations. We pray these things in your name.
Amen. Thank you so much for that. One thing that I'd like to just talk about, because I don't know any of you all, but you all know probably one another, or at least each other's churches, right? So what's said here today stays here, because some of this stuff is a little delicate, and I want to make sure that you get what you need, at least some help. But some of these situations are delicate and challenging or disconcerting, so let's try to be as mindful of that as possible, okay? All right. So, looks like I was drunk when I did this slide. Of these things, what is on your mind? So roles and responsibilities, talking about polity versus policy, policies and procedures, staff evaluations. Oh, should I introduce myself? I'm sorry. My name is Jen Van Zandt. I'm a pastor in the Presbytery of the Northeast, New Jersey. And I was 16 years in my first congregation, and now I'm a bridge pastor a little bit closer to the city, in the city of Springfield. My previous work, I was in training and development, so I did a lot of interfacing with HR folks, and that's the only thing that's reliable. The other stuff isn't important. Staff evaluations are very important to me. Nothing. Weird. Okay, thanks for checking. Pastor evaluations and surveys, I'm going to talk about that. Some basic record keeping. Understanding terms of call. I forgot to insert a terms of call thing, and I know there's a lot. I know Casey mentioned that this is a really hot topic, but you'll be getting a visit from your regional Presbytery rep. Is Carrie Mitchell your regional? Okay, she's making the rounds, so I can answer some general questions, but not specific. I have some secret skills today. Teach about how to deal with conflict, and then they roll into dealing with a difficult or disturbed parishioner. And unfortunately, I've had one of those, and it ended up in a remedial case, so I'm very familiar. But I also did my clinical rotation at Trenton Psychiatric Hospital, and learning about and being aware of mental health and mental disability is a really important part of personnel. All right, we already prayed. All right, friends, let's talk about polity and policy. So the Book of Order has a couple of things that sort of outline what personnel is. Obviously, in the foundational section, we talk about the Galatians text, no longer Jew nor Greek, male or female. Diversity, as it is said there, is imperative. There's no room for discrimination. And we're still struggling with that one, right? Yeah. Then in G3, these are the things that we must. What's the difference between must and may? Anybody? What's the difference between must and may?
Gotta do it.
You gotta do it. So, you gotta have a sexual misconduct policy, a harassment policy, child and youth protection. Anti-racism is a very unusual policy that a lot of churches don't yet have. How many have an anti-racism policy yet? Ish, right? Do you have the rest of these already in play? Ish? Okay, so I've got some tools for you today. I will make sure that either you email me and I'll send you the whole PowerPoint presentation, or maybe I can get Casey to put it up on the website.
Yeah.
Because there are some things in here that you'll want to take and some tools that I've developed, but I will share them with you, all for the cost of a cup of coffee. All right. I just finished the boundary training that was online. It is fantastic. And when I say that, I mean because I also got triggered by it. And that's good news, because most of us who are pastors, the boundary training 20 years ago was, all right, let's look at a case study. And everyone sits around and yucks it up and jokes about it. It was terrible. The boundary training now is really fantastic. And so I encourage you to make sure your pastors get to it, as well as anybody on personnel. And then the best and most interesting thing you can do is put together the manual of operations. I'm in a church right now as a bridge pastor, and even now, 4 years later, half of it was outdated. So it's something you really got to keep up with, especially if you're in an interim position or you're looking for another pastor, because that's a really important way for the pastor to get updated. Yes?
Is this training for employees or also discussion about?
Which training?
I'm sorry, the boundary.
The boundary training is mandatory for pastors every 36 months, but if you can get your personnel chair to do it too, it would be a really good idea. Especially, and your Christian ed director. Okay, let's talk about the role of the personnel committee. This is really important, again from personal experience, that the personnel committee partners with the pastor to manage staff performance, evaluations, and compensation. The pastor is an ex officio of that committee. They are not the boss of the pastor or any other staff. And that's a very important distinction. My previous personnel committee did not quite understand that, and it pushed me out the door. So it's really important that you make sure that your personnel committee is aware of that, is partnering with and supporting the pastor. Yes?
Is this going to be on the Christmas side?
We haven't discussed that, but if I can't commit for Casey, but when he comes back, we can ask him. But if not, I can just email it, and then he can distribute it to you all in the old-fashioned way, by email. Okay? Okay. In addition, friends, it supports the pastor in their very diverse roles to be a safe and confidential ear to both the pastor and the congregation. As you all know, lots of times someone's upset and they don't want to tell the pastor, but they can tell someone on personnel, and then the personnel person can then say to the pastor, hey, there's some things we got to button up or talk about or smooth over. Again, pastors have a lot of stressors. As you know, the liturgical seasons are very, very demanding. They're exhausting. They're exciting and they're joyful. Well, not Lent so much, but, you know, that Holy Week thing is a little dark. But they're important to support the pastor, because the pastor's going to drop balls. They're going to forget to make phone calls. Their pastoral care might even slip off a little bit. And then they also have personal challenges of mental wellness and health. And most people know that pastors really struggle with that, because most pastors, if they love their jobs, are going to care for the parishioner first and leave the self-care for another year or 6. So that's an important part of you, making sure the pastor is taking care of themselves. The personnel committee should never meet without the pastor. Let me repeat, never meet without the pastor, because it builds distrust. The only time you meet without the pastor is when you're discussing their annual evaluation. Yes?
Suppose you don't have a pastor.
Well, then you don't have to worry about it.
But the personnel can still meet.
Of course. I just meant if you have a pastor, don't meet without them.
Can I ask a technical question?
Of course.
So if we're scheduling these meetings and she can't make it, do we still meet? Or do
No,
we
you have to check the pastor's schedule,
Okay,
and then say, okay, pastor's available, X date,
okay.
and then send the rest of the personnel committee and say, here are the dates he or she is available, and let's find one that we can all meet at.
And one last thing, if, let's just say, at the last minute, we learn that she's unavailable, we also cancel that meeting?
Unless there's something perfunctory that has to happen that you don't need the pastor to weigh in on. Can you think of something that's perfunctory and, right, exactly. And I'm not trying to be cute when I say that, but I think it's important that the pastor is the called and installed, or the pastor is the paid professional. The personnel committee are all volunteers, so they got to flex. What was the last one? Yeah. And then you have to share the minutes with the session. Again, being, as I say, if you can't be nice, be vague. Right? There are some things, like you don't want to share in your report to the session that the church administrator is having infertility issues. Right? But you could see that coming up on a report if someone is very specific and they're very detailed. So you just, be very general about stuff, but still letting the session know that you're doing the work that needs to be done. Okay? Any other questions about this dynamic? Yes?
Well, I have just a question, I understand that the personnel committee is not the pastor's boss, for sure. Nevertheless, it's involved in a review of the pastor and is after the session, signs off the review, it is discussing that review with the pastor and might have to be the bearer of, less than great news. So,
Your question is?
Well, my question is, how does one do that without being perceived as being bossy? I'm going to answer that question in a few slides. Okay, excellent.
Yeah. I'd also put to you that you should not present the review to the session until you've met with the pastor and had a conversation about it. Because the last thing you want is for your pastor to say at the session meeting, as you're moderating the meeting, wait, what? Right? So you want to meet with the personnel chair and probably a second person as well, and the pastor, and then once that's completed, then you bring it to the session. Yes?
So hypothetically, the session has elected the personnel committee. The personnel committee has overseen review of the pastor. The pastor's review is not positive. The pastor's present. The pastor knows. The pastor is now on a sort of performance improvement plan. It is not going well. There is another review. The review is even worse. The personnel committee cannot meet to discuss next steps without the pastor because that's...
So that is, I'm getting to that in a minute.
Okay.
First of all, don't forget the personnel committee is a subcommittee of the session.
Correct.
Right? Number one. Number two, if there are performance issues, yes. Especially if they've already been put sort of on notice on some things are not going well, yes, they can meet to say, okay, how do we approach this again or in a different way? Sometimes the personnel committee will even get COM involved as a first listen. And then there are coaching options and a lot of other things. But I'll get to that because I just had that situation recently. Okay. So here are your responsibilities. And again, yeah.
I'm sorry, before you move on, I was just looking back from our clerk of session meeting this morning, and Susan shared with us that the church council's policy should include requirements for boundary training, meaning that session needs to do the boundary training as well. Is what she shared with us.
Okay.
I don't know if that's, New York law or something, but...
No, it wouldn't be law. I just don't know that it would have the same level of in-depth training. It certainly could. It may also have to do with what the presbytery determines in terms of what the budget is to get as many people through, because I think the presbytery absorbs the cost of it. And I'm new in the presbytery I'm serving, so I couldn't tell you what that is. But yes, it makes sense because the current training is for religious-based or faith-based organizations, and it often talks about religious workers as well as pastors. So it's excellent training, and the more you can get in there, I think that's quite right.
At a minimum, the sexual harassment training New York State requires.
Is that right? Okay, Jersey does.
That's an hour and 15 online.
Yeah, okay. All right, great. Thank you for that. All right, so here are your responsibilities. Clear expectations of roles and responsibilities for the paid and the volunteers. Regular reviews of compensation. and benefits, if you offer benefits to anyone beyond your pastor. Policies and procedures, everything's up to date. Regular feedback and appreciation. We were talking about this at lunch. Both staff and pastors don't get enough, not only constructive feedback, but appreciation. And it takes so little to lift up the church admin on her 5th anniversary, right? Or the choir director on 10 years of service. These things are small but important, and they really help your staff retention. And the sexton, of course, absolutely. And maybe a new back brace. Boundaries, friends. The boundaries are the most important thing that are going to save you from inappropriate conversations, inappropriate parishioners, because there are always a few, inappropriate people who are pushing for data about the pastor, whether it's personal or professional. Boundaries. Like I said, I did my training at Trenton Psychiatric, and my supervisor said, "Jen, you're being too nice, and the patient doesn't understand." And I said, "I feel like if I say anything further, it's harsh." And he said, and I quote, "Jen, some people only understand the language of 2x4. Now, it's both funny, but it's true. And I have to say, sometimes especially earlier in my ministry, I found that in the erring on the side of being gracious, I didn't get my point across, and so people thought it was an option instead of this is what you need to do differently. And that's what therapists call leaky boundaries, right? And so you're giving a mixed message. So it's nice to be gracious, but boundaries need to be firm, and once you have firm boundaries, then you're good to go. But if you keep moving the boundaries, what happens? That person still thinks, I know how to get at her. I'll go this way, right? So boundaries. Can't say enough.
For instance, that's a big term, boundaries.
Yes. Jack, who is now with our Lord, used to come in every Sunday morning to greet me before worship in my office to say hello and check in. But he started telling me off-color jokes. And I asked him the first time, please don't do that. He did it again. He said, this one's a cute one. I said, okay, because I think cute means like puppies, right? He tells me another one. I said, Jack, let me tell you something. If you come in here again and tell me a joke, you can't keep coming to my office. I won't allow it. Stop telling the jokes. He didn't come for about 6 weeks. But then he found jokes he could tell me because it was his way of finding connection, especially after his wife died. And then the jokes were clean. And then everything was fine. Okay? Another one is one of my favorites. So my first career was in the private jet business, and I leased and chartered private aircraft, White Plains, Teterboro, Morristown. And these are the world's wealthy, right? So this guy who's the founder of Fruit of the Loom, literally, had a table at the Rainbow Room every day. And I was scheduling a trip for he and his wife to go from New York to Cairo on a 20-day jaunt in an airplane that costs $5,000 an hour. Okay? So this trip is about $125,000. So we have a lovely lunch. I'm about 25 years old, 100 pounds lighter. And we finish lunch, we get in the elevator, and he turns to me, and he puts his hands on my breasts. And I push him against the wall. I say, do you do that again? I'm going to break your airplane in Cairo, and you're going to walk home. That's another boundary. Any other examples? No? Okay. All right, friends. Policy, the personnel policies, these are maddening. And yet if they're not clear, we find ourselves in trouble, or someone's going to find that gray area, and then we've got larger conversations, right? So here's the content. This is, again, from the Highlands Presbytery website, so if you don't want to wait for my content, you can go there and just grab it. I just thought I'd put it together for you here. But I'm not going to read it to you, but you can just see These are some of the details that you need. Right here.
What's MAO?
Member at large?
Oh,
Are there consultants that we can bring on to help us with this, between this and purpose session and all the other policies? We're driving the policies, do I hire somebody to go over these? Because if it's a small congregation with 2 volunteers, who's going to do all this?
Are you familiar with the term polity wonk? No? It means like you really love polity, you're like a geek, right? I'm a polity wonk. There are people who love to go through policies and clean them up. They are God's children, all of them.
I'm saying that I'm a retired volunteer and I'm already doing 3-4 jobs.
Do you have a bulletin board of open positions or need help in the presbytery? Do you have that?
online.
Online.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are people who probably were documenters in their work life who are missing, all the strike-throughs that can help you with that and would love to do it. I don't think you have to pay a consultant, but, do you know anybody that you can think of that would be interested in that? And going through policies and cleaning them up? No.
Mother.
Okay, but that'd be something that you could put out there. You could have the presbytery do an e-blast and say, is there anyone who'd be interested in helping us clean up our policies? Anyone who really loves documents?
And there are a bunch of policies. I know there's I helped write it. Technology policy on the website.
Yeah.
A bunch of different ones.
So I looked up. Go ahead.
And if they're not already doing it, Tom, advocate for policies. There should be a financial policy one on there. There should be.
I think between Tom's, your tab, and financials, and the Highlands Presbytery has ad nauseum stuff. So what I would recommend is if you can't find it on your presbytery, go to the Highlands Presbytery. It's Highlands, New Jersey. And they have a ton of stuff. And what you do is you download it, you cross out the stuff that doesn't work, you fill in what does work for you, and you print it, and you're good to go. That's the easiest thing, because people, because they've already been vetted. So that's the way to go. Okay. Other policies. All these things that that your employees need to know about, right? And you don't think about it, but even just family and bereavement leave for your church administrator, your treasurer, your sexton, right? They need to know about that. So the church I'm serving now has we don't call her sexton, we call her the person who cleans the church. She doesn't have a role. And she's tired of doing it, and her back is killing her. And I just learned the other day that she hasn't taken vacation in 13 years. So we're giving her as a going away gift, like a lot of paid vacation to say, get down to Brazil, have that, connect with your family again. So there's all sorts of things that you want to make sure are buttoned up here. And then you guys have to do fingerprinting in this presbytery or no? Okay, we do it in Jersey, unfortunately. But yeah, there's all that.
We generally do it through the presbytery, but we do it because we want to.
Yeah, it's important. Unfortunately, there was a pedophile who got arrested literally across from my condo 2 weeks ago. Yeah, awful stuff. Okay, this is also all the resources from your presbytery. These are live links. I don't know why I gave that to you, because you can go on your own site. But if you can't find them on your site, you can go to the Highlands Presbytery, and there's tons of stuff there.
One of the tabs that's kind of hard, if you're not looking, is resources for sessions.
Yes, okay.
What you want to look under.
Or personnel. There's a personnel tab, too. There's a whole bunch of stuff under there. Yeah.
Express my opinion on something is that we really ought to be structuring employment so that we give people vacations. And the second thing is that we try very hard to keep the CR, employer COI, cost of living increases, parallel to what the presbytery recommends for clergy. And sometimes not possible, but I think that it's a measure of respect for one's employees to try.
So that's an interesting tidbit. I'm of the opinion that you should have 2 increases for your staff. One is COLA. That's what they call it now. COLA, C-O-L-A, cost of living. And the other one is performance-based. So we're in a year where the market's starting to go crazy, right? Interest rates are sky high, the biggest we've seen in the longest time. And so, but also our costs of living is rising. So we want to make sure that when we give increases, we tell our staff, this percentage is COLA, and this is because you're doing such a great job. So those 2 pieces together. The church can't always afford both of those things, but do your best because they will knock themselves out for you if you just give them a little bit of both. Okay, all right. This is my second favorite part of the show. Staff and pastor evaluations. For staff, I've developed 3 types, okay? The first is a very formal evaluation, which again is for newer employees that have a very technical job or a very complicated job with a diverse set of responsibilities, and then an employee who needs specific evaluation and direction. Let me tell you about Nancy, okay? Nancy is a really skilled church admin. There's nothing she won't do. She's really good with detail, and when I say really good with detail, I mean she's OCD. And she knows it, and I knew it, but because of that, specificity is important to her. And if you give her vague anything, she's going to come back and ask 3 or 4 times, what do you mean, what do you mean, what do you mean, what do you mean? And I don't have OCD. I have ADD, so I forget to tell her stuff, but I don't have OCD, right? So the format that I'm going to show you in a minute, and again, if it doesn't translate on the slide, I'll send it to you directly. We wrote together, not she, the personnel chair and I wrote together a long time ago, so that I can be as specific, and I can also affirm the smallest thing that she does that I'm going to forget about if it's a generic evaluation, right? Now, the choir director, she's a more seasoned choir director. Her job is pretty basic, right? She leads the choir and the bells, and she plays the organ, and she selects the music. I don't need a very in-depth evaluation for her. So she's more seasoned. Her job is less technical in theory, and she needs less direction. Okay, those are 2 types. The third type is what you were asking about earlier, which is when we have to let someone know that things are really not going well. And by law, right, Tom, in corporations, you have to give an employee 90-day notice for corrective action before you either terminate them or change their job. So those are the 3 types for employees. Not talking pastors, employees, or volunteers.
Can I just, for that 90 days, that, I just wanted to be clear, if it's an egregious act, you can terminate immediately.
Yes.
Theft or...
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's actually in the Book of Order as well. Mm-hmm. Without review, yeah.
I totally understand and respect the difference between 1 and 2, but if you evaluate 2 people on staff in 2 different ways, although their job descriptions are vastly different, but don't you run the risk of somebody that steps and saying, why are you picking on me, why are you asking me all those questions, or, if you are very specific with that person, and not as specific with somebody else, use the same formats or whatever. Don't you open yourself up to why are you asking all these questions or picking on me?
That's an excellent question, which is why I'm giving you the option to use whatever tools you want. I'm just finding that for some people, one evaluation works better, and it helps their performance and our communication, and another one was overkill and didn't work for us because we tried it, and I said, I'm going to try something different. So you can use the same evaluation for everyone you want, but when you look at this evaluation, you're going to see it's a lot of work.
No, I understand.
Yeah, but it's a fair question. It's a fair question. So this is part of what you need to do for your employees, which is to give them proper supervision and evaluation. This is, again, very obvious. There's nothing new here, but I just want to make sure that you've got all of this. Sorry, yeah.
I work in the judicial.
Right. I know, we all have these acronyms. Yes?
Actually, you pointed out that personnel committee is not the boss of this.
Correct.
Is the personnel the boss of other staff?
It all depends on the size of the organization. No. No, even in tall steeple churches, there's infrastructure so that some pastors manage some staff and the head of staff manages other staff. Sometimes it doesn't work out well, but generally no. In a small church, no, too much invitation for power abuse.
And in the absence of a pastor, which is our current situation, personnel to step in as supervisor of the staff, is that appropriate? Because if they go to a secretary,
Well, I think this is one of these questions of it all depends on how much supervision the staff members need, and they need support. They need to know they're in a safe work environment. They need to know they're going to be fairly compensated. They need to know that they're going to get at least semi-regular feedback, and that the personnel committee has their back from the complainers, or the negative people, or the gossip people. Now, you don't have any of those in your church, but I have a few of those in mine. And so the personnel committee is to have the back of the staff first and foremost. And then if something starts to heat up, where's your first phone call? Don't answer. Where's your first phone call? And specifically, committee on ministry. And say, hey, can you come in and just make a little visit?
Can I ask back to the head of staff?
Sure.
So could the pastor decide, him or herself, that they are head of staff?
No, that's part of the position description. So generally, when you have a solo pastor,
Yes.
and then part-time employees, the job in the terms of call says solo pastor. But if you have other clergy, like I did, I had 2 parish associates.
Yeah.
Now I'm a head of staff because now I'm supervising 2 parish associates along with the other 4 part-time people.
I see. Okay, thanks.
In a small church, is it appropriate for session to act as personnel if you don't have a personnel committee?
The entire session?
There's only 3 of us,
Your session is 3 people?
which is the minimum.
One moment, please.
Are there some members that could be also on the personnel committee?
Well, yeah. I mean, you should have members at large on your personnel committee anyway. But I would really recommend that you either see if you can't get a COM liaison to meet with. Wait, you're without a pastor right now? Is that?
We have a pastor.
No, I think is your COM liaison helpful? I guess that's a loaded question because.
I don't even know who it is.
Oh, well, that would be your first call. Yeah, and I'm not kidding, because some COM liaisons are not present and they really don't know what they're doing, or they should have rolled off a long time ago. But there's some COM liaisons who are fantastic and love to help churches when they're in the middle of difficult stuff.
We're just a small church that we just can't get anybody to be on committees.
Right. They're all committees of one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're the same person as an office.
Yeah. Yeah. Hang on. One thing I don't do well with is side chatter. So hang on to those comments and I'll get to you next.
Right. I'm a somewhat larger church, obviously, a little bit more people on session, but we're in the same thing, where the bylaws even say, in the absence of personnel committee, session as a whole will act as the personnel committee.
Okay. Tom, do you have any feedback on this?
It's a practical situation. It really comes down to being practical. If you go to the people, you realize that you have to pray about it and be fair about it, because in the end, your reactions are oftentimes very clear, and you have to be very careful about how you manage, because there's not checks and balances that would normally be done.
That's a very good. Right. Tom and I talked at lunch. I mean, that you have to be so careful when you articulate something, especially coming out of the corporate world. But I think there are resources within every presbytery to help churches wherever they are, in whatever situation they're in. You just got to get to know some folks. And if not, call Deb and Tom and say, hey, we need some talent here because, the pastor needs support, but you guys are killing yourselves on 18 other things, so maybe it's time to, to get some support so the pastor, and also gets good feedback. There was a hand. Do you have a hand?
No, I was just going to say, I don't think you would go to the presbytery for some support.
They're not very supportive.
But in the absence of that, is there one of the three people that maintains somewhat of a relationship to the staff? Because it can't be the whole session.
I think it's a case-by-case basis. I think you just want to make sure that the right people on session are connecting to the right people on staff.
Does there have to be a minimum amount on personnel? Can one person be personnel committee?
I mean, I've had years where I've had a personnel committee, but only the chair has been connecting and helpful and available, even though there are 4 on the committee. One's traveling, one was doing chemo, and the other one was always in the wind. So sometimes it comes down to one person. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Definitely.
You've never dealt with that, though, have you? No. Was there another hand over here somewhere? Was that you?
Well, I don't know. My side chatter was, every church has a COM liaison.
I can't speak for your presbytery, but in theory, that's the way it's supposed to work. Right, Tom? Yes. So call the presbytery office and ask Deb, who's my COM liaison? It might be even her. You never know. Might get lucky. Okay.
Sorry, one last thing.
Sure.
Is there a good number would you suggest for having on personnel as a committee if you're able? What is a good number?
I would really say, what size is your church?
Well,
200.
Oh, Lordy.
200.
And how many do you worship? Roughly?
People on Sunday?
30. Yeah.
Okay. I would say a committee of 3, a chair, a member at large, and a second person would be fine.
Probably enough.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, friends. The moment you've been waiting for. I'm showing you, this is the very specific evaluation form. It's so specific. You don't have to take a picture of it, girl, because I'll send it to you. Or Casey, we're going to have to talk about how I get the data to folks. Either post it on your website or email, okay?
Thank you.
So listen, just hang on, okay? Take a deep breath, Take a deep breath. This is the first section of 3. Okay? But this is what I found for people who need specificity and really important feedback. And it's again, 1 being never meets expectations, 5 exceeds expectations, right? So you have this is your knowledge and skills for your admin or your choir director or your sexton or your financial or your treasurer, okay? So first you talk about their knowledge and skills. Here's what you're doing really, really well. Here are some areas where we need to still get you shored up, okay? Second section, here are your work habits. So if your secretary is coming in 15 minutes late every day, now you have a format to let them know that this doesn't work. Or change their schedule, right? And I don't know if you can see, but down the bottom, what you do is you get an average score, and then give examples. Remember that time when, give something positive first, right? When the fire alarm went off and the fire department came. You handled that so beautifully, you communicated with But remember that time then when the X, Y, and Z happened? That didn't go so well, right? So, pluses and minuses. Okay. Then the last one is communication and relationships. Again, you see how specific and granular this is? Okay, so what you do then is you add up the 3 sections. You take an average score, and then you get some comments And then initially when I started working with this, she was my third admin, I would deliver it to her, and then we'd have a conversation in each of the sections. Once we started working together and things were going much, much better, I would send her last year's evaluation, have her assess herself in all these boxes. I would do the same, and then we'd start the conversation. Oh, you gave yourself a 2 there? No, I think you're much higher than a 2 on this particular. Oh, really? So it's really a helpful tool, I found. Okay, so this is the granular evaluation. And again, I have this in Word, so I can send it to you. No problem. Okay, here's the other one. This is called the Mutual Expectations Review. Very vague, very general. You give it to the employee, you both fill it out, you come to the meeting, and you talk through the sections, okay? So, Josie, what accomplishments did you have for yourself in this category? Right? And then she would list down 4 or 5, and I'd say, well, don't forget, I listed those things, but I also listed this other thing that you did this year. Oh, I forgot about that, right? Then you go to the next section, and now you talk about, tell me what you love about the job. Oh, I love running up and down those stairs to find light bulbs. Oh, okay. What do you think you see opportunities for change or growth? The admin I'm working with right now said, I think I'd really like to learn more about how to work in Word and Excel. Good to know. We'll get you a course. And then I say, I like those ideas. And then also, sometimes you explain things to me, and it feels like you're a little bossy. So I'd like to have conversations about those things instead of you coming and telling me how things are and have been for the last 75 years. Let's be more my mother was like that too. Okay, fair. And then goals to be, if this is your first review, then you obviously just say, okay, let's agree to these things. So in 6 months' time or in a year, we can remember what we talked about. I think this format also would be really helpful if personnel committees had used this with my reviews. But they didn't. They got together over a bottle of Chardonnay and said, okay, what does she do good? What do people hate about her, right? And then it was all this tippy-toeing around. And Rev Jen, sometimes I'm like, look, that's not helpful. I need concrete. So this format, and that's why I put here employee/personnel. So this is a format for personnel to do. And then I do my side, and then we get together, and it's a great conversation starter. It's honest, it's open, it's transparent, and I would really have appreciated that format. Any questions about this? Yes?
I'm a little confused with the employee/personnel part and the pastor. Does the pastor write the second part?
So whether it's an employee, it's parity, right? So it's the employee filling out his or her part, the pastor filling out the parallel, but then it's the same thing that you use when the personnel committee is reviewing the pastor. Make sense? You guys had a little too much pasta at lunch. I can tell you're all getting that post-coma lunch. We're gonna be active in a minute. I talked about Pilates. I can't do Pilates, but we might do some jumping jacks. Okay, friends. I got to talk to you about this because it's on my mind and heart. A couple of thoughts. Pastor evaluations, please make sure that there's place for mutual evaluation and input. Make sure, if you can, that there's 2 personnel members present, so it's not a tete-a-tete between either the personnel chair who can't deliver the hard news or the personnel chair who likes you so much they're not going to tell you what's not going well. And I've had both. Make sure the evaluations are then done annually, even though I hate them, and share them with the session. And it helps the pastor and the session lead really well together if everything's out in the open instead of the meeting, after the meeting in the parking lot. It also informs terms of call, right? And it's also an opportunity for the pastor to have an honest conversation with, do I still feel called to this church, or are they moving in one direction and I'm moving in another? Obviously, it avoids misunderstandings, but here's the big finish. Don't do church surveys. Howard Delhagen, Henry Howard Delhagen, he was the Presbytery exec of the Synod. And he told me 15 years ago, don't do them. They're stupid. It's hidden agendas, and it's pot shots at the pastor. Unless you do want to make a sea change, SEA, have the pastor fully involved, have the pastor vet all of the questions, and be involved with all of the responses. But it's not fun, I'll tell you. And it's usually not all that useful. Any questions about that? All right, now that I brought you down, obviously this is record keeping, this is obvious. I think I took this from your website. It's just important to make sure that you've got every documentation that you need. The file should probably be locked in the pastor's office, but not with like a safe and a big combination, just, in a credenza with some keys. Pastor files are sealed for 2 years. This is from the presbytery, my presbytery. Sealed for 2 years after they depart. And if anyone wants to see their file, they can look at their file with a designee or themselves in the with the pastor present. That's pretty basic stuff. The data to include, I think, is simple. I'm just going to skip through this because I want to get to the good stuff. You probably already know this. It'll be in the files. Okay. Diffusing conflict. So in my previous life, I ran a company for training and development. And we taught listening skills for dealing with conflict, but we also taught them to salespeople. And the way that they work is by not talking, but by listening. So I want to teach you how to do that because, especially if you're on a personnel committee or you're the clerk of session or you're all the above, what are you going to want to do the minute you hear a problem? Solve, fix. And that's not the first step. So you probably have done this before. It's called Rogerian. It's Socratic listening. But here are some important phrases to hold on to. So when someone has a complaint, whether it's after worship on a Sunday morning, it's a staff member, it's a pastor, or someone complaining about the pastor, before you explain, play it back. So what you're saying is, you don't like the fact that the pastor comes in to the sanctuary 10 minutes after worship has begun. Okay? I heard about that once. It wasn't me, it was somebody else. Okay, let me clarify. You still haven't seen your quarterly contribution statement? That's the pastor's fault, right? Okay, just so they understand, you've called the pastor 3 times to go see your ill mother, and you still haven't heard back. Right? Now, this is all obvious. But what it does is it starts to diffuse the heat, number 1. Number 2, it gives you time to think. Number 3, it lets them know you are listening and not solving. And number 4, it starts to build a connection where right now there's something wonky or uncomfortable. Okay, and this is nothing new, right? The trick is, do we do it when our back is against the wall? So now what you do is you let them keep talking. Tell me more. How many times did you call back? Tell me more. You don't have to say, tell me how many times you've left a voicemail. Just tell me more. What else should I know? Why do you say that? Why is this important to you? Or, is there anything else I should know? And that's when you get the truth. How many of you are parents? How many of you are grandparents? What happens to a 3-year-old when they're having a tantrum? They go see grandma, because grandma will give them what they want. If you say to a 3-year-old, they're crying, they're having a fit, what do you want? What do you really want? A popsicle?
Yeah, sure.
Right? The same thing with an adult who's unhappy or feels like the pastor's not caring for them or has preached a sermon that they can't stop thinking about.
They want a popsicle?
Right? Okay. Find a partner. Find a partner. You can't do this by yourself. You got to find a partner and be able to look at them. Come on, get up. Find a partner. Let's go. Let's go. Find a partner. Everybody's got to have a partner.
You need us standing?
Seating. Seating is fine. Find a partner. Oh, there's a gal back here. This lady in the maroon. Can you compete with the lady in the maroon? Everybody's got a partner, right? Okay. I'm going to give you the opportunity to practice your listening skills. Figure out who's going first. Who's going first in your group? Raise your hand. Who's going first? Who's going first? Raise your hand if you're going first. You're going to say to your partner, tell me about the most interesting vacation you ever had. Okay? Hang on. Tell me about the most interesting vacation you've ever had. Okay? In 2 minutes, you're going to listen, and I want you to use some of these probes. Or play back. Oh, so what you're saying is, when you got to Punta Cana, there was a lizard in your room. Okay?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
All depends on whether you like lizards. Okay? You're going to have 2 minutes to practice these, and then we'll swap. Okay, hold on, I got my stopwatch. Can't start yet. Shh, can't start yet. All right, you ready? How's that? Okay. All right, you guys ready? Yep. Go. All right, how many probes? How many probes did you use? How many did you use? How many? 4. How many? How many?
4.
How many? How many? 5? Oh. How many probes? 3 or 4? 5? How many? 4. How many? 4? 5? How many probes? You're still talking. 2. Oh, see. Right. How about you guys? How many probes? How many? How many probes in the back? 2? 3 and... Okay. Why do you think I ask about the number of probes? Okay, see if you're listening, but here's the thing. If they keep talking, you don't need to use them. That's right. But here's who they really work on. Teenagers.
Oh, yes.
How was school? Fine. Tell me more. Well, the teacher called out sick today, and so I was really bored. What else should I know? Well, then you're just going to go there, right? But even better than that, this is going to turn your marriages around. Okay? You use this with your spouse, I'm telling you, you're going to be going to your second honeymoon.
My daughter says, I hate it when you say, tell me more.
Okay. So you say, what else should I know?
No questions until the end, she says.
Why do you say that?
Yeah, right, exactly. See, and so they're natural, right? It's not some gimmick. But parishioners and people who are upset, they don't realize that this is helping them to open up and talk, and you're a safe listening space for them, because we all know, whether it's our spouse, a child, a neighbor, the thing they come in with is not the thing they're really upset about. It's something more. And this gives you the opportunity to, like I said, to cool down, go into a nice space of conversation. It's always impossible to talk in churches because, the pews, But, get a cup of coffee, a coffee hour, and go someplace and talk. It lets them know that they're valued, even if you don't agree with them, and that perhaps together you might be able to figure out a solution before you send a nasty letter to session or the pastor. Yes?
I think this is good, but what I found that is, over the years we're coming more into situations where these conversations are email-based or less personal. And I guess, do you have any advice in that? Should we try to turn them into face-to-face conversations?
What do you all think? Yes. We've all gotten hooked into what started out as a simple email conversation. You give a response, you go to lunch, you come back, and then you have 2 paragraphs. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. So what you want to do is to say, it sounds like you're kind of upset. I think it makes sense for us to either meet face-to-face or have a phone conversation. I can hear you're really anxious, upset, angry, hurt, whatever. Yeah, face-to-face. And everybody's split on this. I personally believe that Zoom gives an excuse not to be honest and authentic. You can hide when you're on Zoom. You can't do that when you're face-to-face. So I highly recommend that. Okay. I think that's almost all I've got here. These are some other deeper probes that you can ask. I like number 2. Why is this important right now? Well, because my husband's going in for cancer testing. My wife lost her job. My son just got diagnosed with X, Y, and Z, right? My wife and I get divorced. Like, when you ask the question, why is this important right now? Well, I want to get this to you before the personnel committee does the pastor's evaluation, because I want this to be known, or worked out, or sorted. So that one is a real winner. I like that. The other one is, what's changed to make this so urgent or a priority right now? What's changed? You want to practice again? No? Yes? You get the idea, right? Yes, of course.
I come from a church where we had pastors that were there for a very long time, and then we went through our interim process and stuff, and so we've been used to having long-term, and now we're in a situation where we're adjusting to new people over shorter periods of time. So when you're developing a relationship with a pastor, is a pastor evaluation something that should be done more than just once a year? Should there be, how do you recommend developing that relationship with a new pastor when you're starting out, especially if the pastor joined your church during COVID?
I would say, so what you're asking is this a tool for anything else besides?
Yes.
Okay. I wouldn't use it as a tool to build a relationship with a pastor.
Okay.
What I would do is that if the pastor's fairly new and it's a new rhythm of shorter pastorates, you might ask the pastor, would you like a 6-month check-in? Would that be helpful for you? Informal conversation. Let's go out to lunch. Let's go to somebody's house for some, coffee and cake and have a conversation just to see how it's going. If the pastor says, yes, I'd love some feedback, great. If the pastor says, no, I'm not ready, like either because the pastor's fresh out of seminary and their head's still spinning. You know the joke? Being a new pastor is like being a stray dog at a whistlers convention. You just don't know what's going on for the longest time. But even if it's a second call for this person and they've been leapfrogging a little bit, they might need a little more time, especially if they're an introvert, right? Because pastors who are introverts need more time to process and sort and discern. But ask them. if they'd find it helpful. I didn't want to hear what they had to say in the first 6 months because I was still terrified. But a couple of years in, yeah, something's changed. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Don't you also want to develop trust? I mean, you don't want to go right to the evaluation. You want to develop a relationship first.
Well, I think that's what personnel meetings are for on a monthly or quarterly basis, just to sort of check in. But a lot of this stuff is situational, right? Mm-hmm. And you all know the DNA of your churches. And you have to make that decision. But again, always make it with the pastor. How do you want to do this? How do you want to work it? What's most helpful? What worked in your last church? Or what would you like to see done differently? How can we support you? I can't remember the last time someone from personnel asked me that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm sorry because I'm struggling with hearing this entire thing, but I think I heard you say that church-wide surveys are bad, but I'm wondering about when doing a review rather than just having the personnel committee and the employee do a checklist. We typically ask, for example, if it's the choir director, the choir, to send us commendations and any thoughts about areas for growth. Is that okay?
Yes, and I've done that and I've been very successful at having some good results with that. But as I said, and I'll just walk this way so it's a little more easy to hear for you all in the back. The problem with church surveys is there's always a hidden agenda. And the comments that come back are going to be pot shots to the pastor, especially if we give the option to not put the name next to it.
Oh, yeah.
And so it really set me back, and it was painful. And it wasn't helpful. It didn't help me grow. It didn't help me change. It didn't help me learn. So there's always a hidden agenda, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Now, if the pastor says, look, we've just come out of COVID. I don't know what's up. Let's see what folks want. Do we still want to go back to the soup and chili cook-off? Do we still want to have worship at 10 a.m.? Those kind of things? Sure. But making sure the pastor is fully involved, vets the questions, and they're a church-wide survey, not the pastor's not doing what we want, and this is the way we're going to learn that. Yes?
What personnel forms are legally required to keep for staff?
That is on Tom's website, right?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, she's asking what are the forms that have to be kept on site in the file
For staff.
for staff. And I think I went through that already, but it's the I-9, it's the application, it's their resume. They have it.
Do they have to have a job description? Is it mandatory to have a job description?
We'd be kind of crazy not to have a job description because then the person is looking for a job and then she says, oh, I didn't realize that they take out the garbage. That wasn't in the position. Right? Oh, Tom's here, your Presbyterian personnel guy. Yeah, Tom, stand up. Let's hear your hand. Since you're here, Deb, some of these folks are interested in giving you an enormous raise. How do you feel about that? Yeah? Okay.
I'm here.
Listen, come on. She said, tell me more. Some folks are not aware of the CRM liaison.
Okay.
Do you have a list that you can get out so folks know, especially with churches who are having to do personnel and treasury and wax the floors and all that, and might need some help with that?
Our CRM operates likely a lot differently than yours.
Okay.
We divide it into a transition group and into a congregational connection group, and it filters through our co-chairs, but our congregational connection group. I'm not sure what the specific ask is, but we'll be able to be a resource.
So they can
Likely who we send you to.
Right. Okay. So I mean that makes a whole lot more sense because I openly said that sometimes my CM liaisons, because our church was doing so well, I get the old retired white guy who can't hear. I'm like, yeah, I don't, Jeff, you don't really need to come this month, but thanks for reaching out.
Well, part of the challenge with CLM is we were asking everybody to be an expert in everything.
Right.
And so we kind of divided it up so they all are doing transitions.
Right.
It's a big group. It could be somebody that has an interim letter. And then all y'all over here are doing congregational
On the website, it does, under the Committee on Ministry section, it lists the contact info for the co-chairs for COL.
If it goes.
Did everybody hear that and understand that? Now, can you come forward and share that because folks can't, or can you both come forward because they couldn't hear you? Yeah. Oh, he's right here.
Where's that microphone? We're not using that, huh? Okay.
Here you are.
Let's try this again.
So, just to I'm going to repeat what I said. Is that
Yes,
what you're
please.
asking me
Yep.
to do? Okay. Our Committee on Ministry in Hudson River is different than most presbyteries. Not all, but most. Instead of having every person on the Committee on Ministry be an expert in everything, which if you happen to look on our website under Committee on Ministry, it's not possible. It is a manual that is huge. So we divide it up into separate groups. And we have a group on Committee on Ministry called Congregational Transitions. And they handle everything when there's an interim, when you're looking for a pastor. Any of y'all have looking for pastors right now? I hope you're only from a couple churches.
Well, you have multiple people from one congregation.
You all should know who your COM rep is, right? Yeah, because they're on the ground all the time, always accessible. Other issues and pieces are delineated on the website. There's many things, all the way from installation services to retirements to congregational relations to whatever. Then you would look on there and you can see what else we do under congregational relations. The easiest access point is, as Casey said, we have co-chairs. You just send their email contact is on there, and they will direct you likely somewhere else, or they will intervene on their own, depending on what the situation, what the resource is that you need, what the issue is that you need taken care of. Is that good?
Why don't you give yourself a raise and take the rest of the day off?
Can I do it
There we
myself?
go. We support that.
Yes. Was that helpful? Yes.
So just as a point of possibility for personnel chairs and committees, don't do your reviews on the week of Christmas. My last church was that.
That's terrible.
Really? Yeah, it was horrible. Yeah, that was not fun. And they also hired an outside, this was a church in Connecticut. I was the associate there, and they hired an outside personnel firm to do the personnel stuff. So, not good. Right, so it didn't have the heart that what we're talking about here, where there's trying to understand.
Yeah, so generally you do your evaluations with your employees on their anniversary date, right? But my choir director's anniversary date is December 1st. So we always push her evaluation into the new year when she and I have had some rest, but we make sure that she gets the compensation approved for her increases at the session meeting in December. We just, give her the increase or hold steady and let her know what the compensation is, and then we do the full evaluation, like February sometimes. Yeah. Yes?
You said that the pastor should be part of all of the personnel meetings, but must they be present at all of the evaluations?
You mean of the staff that report to them?
Yeah.
Yeah, the pastors should be doing those evaluations, not the personnel committee. Could be in conjunction with the personnel committee, but since the staff members report to the pastor should be doing their evaluations.
Should the pastor be writing them on as well?
Yes, so that's why I had those forms, so that you give the form to the employee, and the pastor has the form, then you get together, you share the information, and then, so right now, where I am as a bridge pastor, I'm doing like 6-month check-ins. Because none of them have had evaluations in 10 years. And they're all getting really anxious. No, I just want to affirm how well you're doing and see if we're working well together. And I have a staff of 10, so that's a lot of people to check in on. But it takes the anxiety level down, but if you're their direct report. In fact, one of the people on my staff, because she's a church member, thought she reported to the full-time church administrator. And I kept hearing all these things that she was upset about, and she wasn't coming to me. So when we did the 6-month check-in, I said, so how are things going? And she said, good. She said, but so-and-so, takes care of most of the stuff. I said, do you know that you report to me? She said, oh, I thought I reported to the church administrator. I said, let's go down the hall and check in on that. So we go down to the hall to the church administrator. I said, does so-and-so report to you? She said, no, she reports to you.
Wow.
So, yeah, crazy stuff like that, yeah.
If that kind of thing happens, she may get some day-to-day direction.
Exactly right.
So you just have to...
Day-to-day direction is great, but if you're upset about something and steam's coming out of your ears, I'm here to help you get that sorted. Yeah.
So just another question. If you've got every evaluation, it should be the pastor and say one person maybe from the personnel administrator, the whole.
If you can. In my previous church, I sometimes did that, but the relationships were long-standing, and so I just let the personnel committee know that I didn't feel the need to have them check in, but if there are things that I was not aware of, to let me know to fill that in on the review. But some churches like to have a personnel person there. That's your call. Yeah, Tom.
When you look at reviews, what's important as well is we typically look at the job description at that time because it can change.
Sure.
And that person sometimes doesn't really know if they're being evaluated on, and they're surprised. And it's one of the things is review should never be a surprise. If there are issues, you shouldn't really let them fly. There are polite ways and ways that you can try to correct the situation rather than wait for the review, and then you have a very potentially negative situation because the person had no clue that X, Y, and Z should have been done according to A, B, and C.
So thanks for bringing that up. I forgot to talk about that. So you can imagine in a long pastorate, stuff comes up. And I think just because of the way I'm wired, an extrovert, and I don't know, 30 years of therapy or something, I know it's important to nip stuff in the bud. So I'll say, hey, can we meet after church, choir director, to talk about a few things? Same thing with my admin. Hey, come on into the office, let's get a cup of coffee and just check in. You seem a little stressed, and you've been kind of short, and I'm wondering if something else is going on that I should know about. It's stuff like that. Just the small check-ins. But it requires a lot of interpersonal skills. I was in the training development business, so that was kind of helpful. Some pastors don't get any kind of training like this at all. Certainly not at Princeton Seminary. That's my alma mater, right? Yeah. So they need help. And they need professionals who've experienced good things in the corporate world and in places that you all have worked and served as well, because the pastor doesn't know everything. I know that's shocking to hear, but they don't. Questions? Yeah.
Just to clarify, the pastor as head of staff is doing the personnel reviews for all paid staff, and the personnel committee is just doing it for the pastor?
That's what I recommend. Deb, do you have any thoughts about that?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
What about the associate pastor? Who would do that?
The associate pastor is usually done by the head of staff as well, but sometimes the associate pastor has some of their staff report directly to them, like communications and children's ministry, youth director, stuff like that.
Yeah, the way we've done it in the presbytery is the head of staff and a member of the personnel committee. So they're together, and then we have a review, and then the staff person has the opportunity to sit with the member of personnel without the head of staff.
Right.
So that's how we do ours.
But and that's the same thing. That's why you have a personnel committee in the church. So if the employee and the head and the pastor are not getting along, the employee can go to the personnel chair or the personnel person and say, "We're just oil and water. I don't know how to make this work." That's a serious case. But yeah. Okay, so the question was, does the head of staff do all of the reviews of all of the paid staff, and that the personnel committee only does the review of the pastor? And I said yes. Unless you're in a tall steeple where it's a huge staff.
Yeah. Head of staff, that is typically senior pastor.
It's always the senior pastor. May be the only pastor, but when you've got paid staff in the church.
And the logic there is that that person is the person who is most present at church when personnel staff and other people that are excused may not be at church or at church on Sundays, but senior pastor, the head of staff, is at church at most, present at church, therefore he has the most visibility of what's going on.
Yes.
That's the thinking, right?
Well, it's a little more grounded than that, is that these staff members report to the head pastor. Directly to. Mm-hmm. So that whoever the person reports to is the person who should be doing the review, along with a person for personnel.
Am I hearing that, did we just say that the only person that personnel is actually reviewing is the pastor, and that the pastor is reviewing the other employee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
What do you do when you're out of the pastor? Without,
You don't have to review the pastor?
well, but the staff's doing it, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little silly now myself.
I'm just saying, so that.
Right, so now.
Then you have the personnel committee doing the annual reviews, correct?
I'm sorry. I just got a little distracted. Can you say that again?
So when you're without the pastor.
Right.
But you still have paid staff, you still
Yes.
have your administrator, your treasurer, your sexton,
Right.
all that. So then the personnel committee would be then reviewing the case.
Yes, and that's what I thought I maybe talked about this earlier, but maybe it was in my mind. Then it's sometimes helpful, if you've got a nice connection to the COM liaison, they can bring in a pastoral presence that might be helpful, especially if you've got a staff member who's struggling, or some transitions, or morale issues even, Yeah.
So,
4 minutes.
When we see staff, that the senior pastor will review, we're not talking just about the ministers, we're all including like sextons, building managers, or secretary, that's all.
All paid staff. Right. Unless, how many pastors do you have?
Well, we have, so our congregation is really unique in that we're from the Korean congregation. In Rochelle, we have a Korean-speaking congregation, and then we have the English-speaking congregation.
Okay.
So we have our senior pastor, Matthew John, he is the Korean congregation pastor, and then we have the English ministry pastor. So they sort of collaborate together, but senior pastor Matthew John would be the head of staff.
Correct. Again, it's just whoever the person reports to is the person who has the best knowledge to give the annual review and get a personnel person there as a second pair of ears.
Let me just talk about, it makes perfect sense what you're saying, but it seems but there's still a role for the personnel or HR committee to oversee or respond to these reviews.
I wouldn't say oversee. I think that's a troubling word.
I mean, somebody needs to prove.
No, the head of staff is a paid professional. The head of staff's responsibilities include in the job description that the staff reports to the pastor. The pastor only has the responsibility to tell personnel the review was done and then report that to the session. If in the church you want a personnel person present when the reviews are done for the staff, that's okay too. But there's no oversight of the pastor giving a review like any other work scenario.
I'm confused about that. At some point, the review needs to have some influence on the process of, say, merit raises.
Well, I think that's what I was saying earlier, is that if I can't meet with my choir director till January, I'm going to talk with my personnel committee in the previous few months and say, I'm thinking we're going to give her a COLA and we're going to give her performance, or no COLA this year for performance, or across the board.
Is there a role for, a supervisor who reviews an employee, and let's say they might set one, they might think that the employer is working meritoriously or less so. That information somehow has to be passed to a session.
Not the session, back to the personnel committee. That's personnel's job.
But at some point, the session needs to vote on the raise, right?
Right, but you meet with the personnel committee in the fall, and you look at your staff, and you say, okay, across the board, we're down in money, no one's getting raises. Or, in October, this is what I'm thinking for these staff members. Personnel says yes, they take it to session says either yes or no.
That's what I'm saying. So
just for the compensation.
Who is it that's saying, this is what I think?
The pastor or the supervisor reports that
to
the personnel committee, so you're all in agreement.
Right, but that agreement has to be based on some analysis of the review, isn't it?
Well, if I can't physically do the review, but I'm working with this person 4 days a week, I got a really good idea whether this person deserves an increase in performance.
No, I mean on the specific issue of the review. Somehow it seemed to me like there was a sense that the review was private. That it was.
The review paperwork stays in the employee's file. The review is the employee can look at it, but the section I'm not going to reveal the full evaluation to the section.
Is that information passed to the personnel?
Yes.
Oh. So I just misunderstood what you were saying.
But not to approve. Here's the evaluation. Here are the things she's working on. Here are the things he's doing well. And here's my recommendation.
And that is not going to the session.
I'm sorry?
And that does or does not go to the session.
The report that all the reviews have been or will be completed is part of the personnel report to the session, along with the recommendations for compensation for every staff member as part of the budget planning that usually happens in October, November at a session meeting, but they don't get a review.
But that recommendation is based on the reviews in some way, yes.
Like I said, if I can get the review done and it's fair to the employee, I will do it by year's end. But I'm not going to put my choir director in the bind on December 1st. Okay, all right, I think that's it for now, right? All right.